Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 4 of the Q&As. So let's get this done. First question. Does equal total volume between two different sets and rep schemes result in the same hypertrophic response? Example, 6 sets of 5 versus 3 sets of 10. Or would the 5 by 6 be superior because it may lead to better strength development, which would allow for more hypertrophy? Thanks. All right, 6 sets of 5 versus 3 sets of 10. In this case, you're probably going to get slightly more hypertrophy from the 6 sets of 5 unless weight was normalized. And the reason I say that is because with your total sets, if you lifted slightly heavier because you were doing sets of 5, you did the same number of reps through the workout with slightly more weight. You're probably going to get slightly more hypertrophic response. Is it enough of a difference to make a difference? Probably not. That one has a little more hypertrophic potential, but you know what? Probably doesn't matter at the end of the day. I think you're going to see the same results from both. It's not going to be a measurable difference. Not going to be a measurable difference. And they both have their own performance elements that are separate. They have their separate performance elements that are going to have their own benefits. And you know what, even if you were to drop it down to the other extreme, let's say you did 10 sets of 3. And you did 10 sets of 3 with the same weight as the 3 sets of 10, but you moved it faster, more explosive. All right, so which one of those is going to get better results? I think they're going to be the same also. Again, same tonnage, same workload, same reps. Pretty similar. The only difference is that the 10 sets of 3 is going to have better explosiveness. It's going to make you more powerful. It's going to make you faster than the person who did 3 sets of 10. However, is that really going to matter for hypertrophy or workload? No, because that extra explosiveness won't carry over, meaning you're going to gain the same strength as well. You're not going to see a difference in your actual strength, particularly rep strength, because explosiveness starts to fade very, very quickly after your third rep anyway. So the strength you gain from the extra explosiveness, that performance element won't really matter in the grand scheme of things to tonnage. But I think they're going to have, again, in that case, very, very similar hypertrophy. But we know that when we match workloads from very different rep and set schemes in the lab, they all seem to produce very, very similar hypertrophic responses. They give you the same amount of muscle growth. That's just the way it seems to work. All right, next question. I've been lifting for 5 or so years, and I've done 4 powerlifting meets, but recently I've lost that drive, and I don't feel as motivated as I used to. I just feel like I don't care as much about the numbers anymore. Any idea why I feel this way, and is there ways to overcome this? You know what, brother, that's normal. That's normal for every athlete. And here's the question I would ask you. Why do you think you're not enjoying it anymore? Because here's the thing. Most of us out here aren't competing in anything for a profession. You know, when you've got $1 million contract for a sport, you don't have that option. You need to find a way to get your drive back. When your income is dependent upon it, you have to find a way to get your drive back. But if it's not, then it doesn't matter that much. I mean, even with me, for example, the fact that I was competing in powerlifting was a component of my income. It affected my YouTube income to some extent. But I haven't done a powerlifting meet in over 2 years now. I don't really care about competing in powerlifting anymore. I just focus upon getting stronger, being strong, focusing on just my general health, trying to be strong, trying to be explosive, trying to train a lot of different lifts and things that will help me in the real world, help me in whatever other endeavors I plan to do later in life. But I don't care about competing anymore. You know what? It hasn't hurt my income. I make more money now than I did when I was competing in powerlifting by a pretty good margin doing this same thing, doing what I do online. It pays more now than when I competed in powerlifting. So unless it's really tied to your income, why does it matter? We're competing in sports, most of us, because we enjoy competing. It brings us fulfillment. It brings us happiness. It brings us purpose. And here's my question. If it is no longer giving you happiness and purpose, and you don't feel driven to continue to do it, don't worry about it. Don't compete. If you don't love competing, don't do it. Someone who likes competing mildly in something like powerlifting, I would recommend not to really compete. Powerlifting is for people who love doing it. Because here's the thing, anything competitive subjects you to risk. All right, it subjects you to risk. It costs you money. It costs you time. If you don't love doing it, and it's not really fulfilling, and you're not getting that same high from competition anymore, that sense of purpose and drive that you used to have, then don't do it. It's not worth it in that case. Who cares about getting that drive back? Find your passion for something else. You just don't have passion for it anymore. Who cares? Doesn't mean you can't continue to lift, doesn't mean you can't continue to be strong and worry about your fitness, because everyone should care about their fitness. Everyone should lift weights. Everyone should do cardio. Everyone should watch what they eat. Every human being on earth, because it's good for your health. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your emotional health. But if you're not driven to compete in powerlifting anymore, don't worry about it. Don't compete. Find something else to channel your passion into. You could find something else that you're passionate about. You know what? It doesn't have to be that. It could be a different sport. It could be a different competitive endeavor. I mean, some person, it might be to go compete playing chess. For someone else, it could be building cars. For someone else, it could be hand loading ammo and building guns. It could be hunting. It could be art. You could painting, music, something else. Find something else that drives you and gives you passion and makes you excited and happy about what you do. It's not going to be the same thing your whole life. Tons of people change the things in their lives that they're passionate about. You can be extremely passionate about something for a year or two, and then you lose interest, and that's okay. We change and evolve as people. It's not the end of the world, brother. Not the end of the world. All right, next question. Why is it that in the fat-free mass index study, several drug-free Mr. America winners had fat-free mass indexes over 25? It says so in the abstract. Their averages was 25.5 or something. Because when we talk about fat-free mass indexes of people who are truly drug-free, we're talking about people who are very lean. All right? It's possible for someone to have a fat-free mass index of 27 when they're 18 or 20% body fat. What happens when that person cuts down drug-free? They cut down to 8 or 9% body fat. They drop down to a 24 fat-free mass index. How did they have a 27? Because they were not in single-digit body fats. When we talk about that fat-free mass index, we're talking about dieting down, because when you get leaner, really lean, it is impossible to keep all of your lean mass without drugs. All right? It is impossible to keep the lean mass you had at a higher body fat without drugs. That is one of the characteristics. That's why when guys cut down lean and they're still sitting at a 26 fat-free mass index, we go, oh, the guy likes a little bit of trenbolone and Anavar. All right, that's why we say that. All right, that's a big part of it. Now, you look at a lot of these Mr. Americas, you're saying, well, their fat-free mass index is 25.5. Go find a photo of them. That's what I did when that topic came up. I went and looked some of these guys up. And I found contest photos of, what they look like at the Mr. America. They look like at the Mr. Universe. What did they look like? A lot of them were 12 and 13% body fat. Well, okay. They weren't under 10%. Some of these guys in the Mr. America contest, years and years ago, they weren't chasing shredded, ripped physiques. Very, very few of these guys were 10% or lower body fat. The majority of them were above 10% body fat, because that was the look they wanted. And people need to remember that in the 40s, 50s, and even 60s, being too lean, being too shredded wasn't actually considered acceptable in bodybuilding. It wasn't looked at nicely. People could have too much definition. They wanted you to look healthy. And you'll look at it, a lot of these Mr. Americas ranged anywhere from about 11% to as high as about 15% body fat if you look at their actual photos. So that should put it in perspective for you, hopefully. Hopefully that makes a lot more sense. It's the fact that they were above 10% body fat. So yeah, they carried a few more pounds of lean mass. And of course that's going to give different results. All right, next question. I have a pretty significant strength imbalance between my left and right biceps. My left bicep is quite a bit stronger than my right, but is smaller. Any tips, advice to correct or at least minimize this? Thanks. All right, guys, what I always tell people who have these problems, I want you to think about that for a minute. If your left bicep is stronger, the only possible explanation that you have is that you have different insertion points on your left versus right bicep. Or it could be the fact that what you've done, because in your head, you think that side is smaller, you trained it harder and made it stronger. And in your head, for some reason, you see your left versus right bicep is smaller and bigger. That is actually a form of muscle dysmorphia. Because you know what? When they've studied people, do you know some of your really symmetrical, amazingly aesthetic bodybuilders over the years, when they measure their left versus their right side, you know what they found? Sometimes one of their sides was a ½ inch bigger than the other, but people couldn't tell looking at them. People couldn't tell looking at them. Now me, you can clearly see a left versus right imbalance. Why is that? Because I ripped my left bicep off the bone and I actually got an infection in the muscle after it was repaired and everything. I have tissue loss in here. I have tissue they had to remove from my bicep. Then I had scar tissue. It was really hard for me to train it. I have a visible left to right imbalance. Normal people who train, who haven't had an injury, haven't had tissue loss, who think that they have a very visible left to right imbalance that can be seen, they're the only ones who see it. All right? And if you're the only one who sees it, it's not really real that other people notice, and it causes you stress. And if you're the case that you're actually asking questions on how to fix it, and you've gotten to the point to where you've made the left side stronger because you've been training it harder, because in your head, it's smaller. So you've been training it harder and made it stronger because you put more focus on it, yet in your head, it's also still smaller. No one else sees it, but it's causing you distress. That is an actual mental disorder. When something in your life that is insignificant is causing you personal distress, when it causes you distress, you're now dealing with a mental issue. And then people have this stigma against mental issues because someone has a mental issue that they're a bad person or need to be institutionalized. That's not reality. Tons of people have minor mental health issues. This is an example of one. And this is one of the problems we run into with this whole bodybuilding culture, is that it tends to feed into body image disorders and eating disorders. It tends to feed into them, and it causes people to start to obsess over things that don't actually matter. In fact, they tend to obsess over things that no one cares about but them, or maybe a few people on the internet. But I promise you that if your left bicep is at least equal strength to your right when you do concentration curls or whatever, I promise you that if you were to go show it to other people, now they're going to think you're weird as fuck if you do this, because they're going to realize you have an issue also. So just throwing that out there. But if you ask them, does my left look bigger than my right? They're going to have to stop, and you're going to have, the only way they're going to say yes is if you lead them on. Well, yeah, maybe, I guess. But until you point it out and put the idea in someone else's head that your left bicep is smaller than your right, no one else notices. No one else sees it. No one else cares. They don't care. They don't actually see it unless it is really, really visible, like over an inch difference or shaped different due to some sort of trauma or injury. Nobody in the world is going to notice it but you. You need to stop worrying about it and stop obsessing over things that don't matter in any way. You're going to be a lot better off for it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.